This is a conversation I've been really excited to have for a long time. New Methods, which is Sharmadean's brand new book, draws together so much of your incredible wisdom. And I think it's so generous of you to have written this book, because it's off the back of, over a decade's worth of your own self-work and self-reflection. And I think it reflects what you do best, and that is constantly learn, constantly accumulate new data, and then share everything you've got with everyone around you. And I think that is kind of the essence of your spirit. You are so generous with what you learn, and every time you pave a new way, you're like, come on girls, you're coming with me. So I'm sure Sharmadean doesn't need a proper introduction, but just a really quick background. If anyone's sitting here with their nails looking goddamn fabulous with some great nail art, Sharmadean Reid was the founder of WAH Nails and received an MBE for her services to beauty. I like that. Yes, I did.
Just embarrassing, like you're saying it, telling everyone
how fabulous you are. God damn it. She's also the founder of the Stack World, which I imagine lots of you here already know about. Yes, big nods. Which is an incredible network for super smart, powerful, interesting, hustling women who, global now, who all are able to share their knowledge, meet new friends. I've met so many incredible people through Stack. And of course, now she is a published author. So a huge welcome and round of applause to Sharmadean. So just in terms of how this conversation will flow, we will do our wonderful interview. We'll mine Sharmadean for some more nuggets of wisdom. And then we will have a quick break in which I encourage you to talk to someone you don't know here. And then we will finish up the event with the anonymous Q&A. So just Sharmadean, to start us off, can you just explain for us, what are the new methods?
So, New Methods for Women is my selfish answer to a quest for why do I feel so uncomfortable and dissatisfied and anxious all the time. I felt like I did everything right. Like I worked really hard at school. I was always an overachiever. I got my degree, got the job, started businesses, and I think if anyone's seen my career for the last 15, 20 years, it seemed quite effortlessly just rolling into the next thing, the next thing. But actually, it was so stressful, so lonely, you know, and effectively at 28, I started having, like, I think many of us here, panic attacks. I didn't know there were panic attacks. I just thought, oh, my chest is hurting. Oh, my chest is hurting. Okay. Until one time I was lying on the floor thinking, I'm having a heart attack and I'm 27 years old. So then I posted it on Facebook, because this is pre-Instagram being everything. And I posted that I was in hospital and I'd had these tests and they found nothing. And the doctor was like, are you stressed? And someone commented underneath, if you've got chest pain, it might actually be a back issue. And I thought, really? So then I just focused on my back, and I felt that there's this one strip of muscle under my shoulder that starts twitching whenever I'm stressed. It's where I store my stress, trauma, everything. So I focused on relaxing that single muscle, and I never had a panic attack again. And I thought, how simple. I tried a method and it worked. What else can I do? So then I just tried methods for everything. I actually, going back even further, when I was 25, I got pregnant and I learnt about hormones and cortisol. And I thought, if I'm stressed, creating cortisol, that means he's drinking cortisol, which means as a fetus, he's drinking stress hormones. Therefore, I don't want to be stressed. And if you know me, you know that's how my brain works. If this, then that. So then I thought, I'm just going to start writing down everything I try as an experiment to make sure that I am happy, healthy, content, and satisfied. And it took 10 years. It took a long time. And if anyone has been in therapy or in a program or anything, you know that this is like a forever journey. So then how the book came about was, Penguin really wanted me to write a book, and I think what they were expecting was some like millennial girl boss hustle culture book. And I said, I don't know, business is stressful. I don't know if
Everyone's burnt the fuck out.
Yeah, but this is even before that. This is 2017.
Because everyone was beginning to get frazzled.
Because Girl Boss had just come out. Girl Boss was out, I think, 2014 or 15, and they were like, oh, we need like a UK version. And they said, do you want to write a book like this? And I said, I don't think so, and I'm not sure what my idea is yet. And then I was reading, because I was, girl bossing. I was reading loads of business books. I was reading Ray Dalio's Principles. I was reading 48 Laws of Power. I was reading Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. And they're really incredible books. But I was like, Peter Thiel telling me to go and walk into a meeting and he doesn't know I'm black and a woman. He does not know that I'm a black woman. So I cannot just do these tick things he's telling me to do. So then I thought, what would 48 Laws of Power look like if it was written for women? What would, Principles look like if it was written from a woman's point of view? And simply just said the exact same information while also perhaps acknowledging that you have these limitations imposed upon you that you might need to cross first. So then it didn't make me feel like I was an idiot, because otherwise, and again, this goes back to I did everything I thought I was meant to do right. Otherwise, we blame ourselves for why we're not achieving the things we're meant to achieve when the entire world is not designed to support us. So I've been quite obsessed with this at the moment, which is, we were forced to do leadership and become leaders and rise to the top. Not forced. We were told that that was the way to achieve equity. It was a way to achieve, close the gender gap.
We were encouraged to do what men were doing.
We're encouraged to do what men were doing. Do leadership, do entrepreneurship. And both leadership and entrepreneurship are areas which I have been in for a long time. But I still have to go home and do the housework, and it's all the unpaid labor and the emotional labor. So therefore, you can be angry at yourself. You can think, I must not be doing it right, because why am I working as hard as the next person and not getting the same results? So I just wanted to write a book that simply acknowledged it's hard out here and it's not your fault. And that's what I talk about in the first section. It was never your fault, and I can prove it to you. So the book is split into 5 sections. Understanding, which is about knowing yourself, truly understanding who you are and why the world is the way it is. Absorbing, which is a big one, which is how we process information. I feel like part of this journey is understanding that my entire education is colonized, and even stuff like my health, like the way we process information, whether it's media or voices of authority, I'm just more skeptical now about things. I question everything. Where did you actually get that information from? Who designed it? Who wrote it? What was their agenda when they wrote it? The third section...
Every conversation I have, my right-wing mum, I'm like, can you just source that for me?
Yeah.
And lo and behold, she does. And I'm like, well, there's the problem.
Yeah. Or like a peer-reviewed paper that was reviewed by like 3 German men talking about African women's bodies. Do you know what I mean? So like... Then the third section is applying. So now you know yourself, and now you know how you process information. You can start applying it. So that's when you start doing the tests, doing the experiments. How you accumulate, part 4, is now you've got to 0. So I kind of say that Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 was kind of redundant for me when technically I started on -10, and I just had to get myself on a level playing field. So now I'm at 0. What can I do to get more? And that might be, yes, more wealth, but it might be more control, more autonomy, more friendships, whatever. And then as I've taken you up, we go to trimming, which is where I'm like, part 5, trimming, is where you get rid of everything that doesn't serve you. Because I feel like we've all gotten to 28 to 33, 34, and we realise we don't like the friends we grew up with. They're all toxic. We didn't like...
The mass cull basically happens at around 28. You're like,
it's true though, isn't it?
True.
Is it not true? You start to be like, I'm only friends with you because we went to the same uni and I don't actually care about anything you talk about. So then trimming is just getting rid, and it might not just, friends is something I say because it's an easy one for people to understand, but it's habits, it's mental loads. And one of my favourite essays in that section is calculate the cost of your visibility. And I argue with friends about this all the time. Trim the amount that people have access to you. Why are you always present, like living off something which is decaying? This is decaying, and this is my income. That's crazy to me. But for women, visibility, Abadesi actually. I just was thinking about your LinkedIn post, because that was also part of the essay. Abadesi wrote a LinkedIn post about being the token person in your company's literature. So if you are the one person of color, you know, the one non-Christian person, the one person who's non-binary, you're pushed front and center when actually it doesn't truly reflect the company values. That's a cost. And that's something you should be charging for. In addition,
it's like school brochures. Like my school was not inclusive, and yet the
but
brochure was
black
like
boys on the front,
girls. But yes, and then you go to the school, and you're like, this is not what the school looks like.
Exactly, but it's a cost of your visibility. So 49 essays, 5 sections, everything I know to now, apart from 3 essays that I missed out, and one of them's on sex.
Which we will get into momentarily. I love it. Shani does nothing by half measures. You're going to get 49 methods. I just want to say, as you described that, you begin the book with a quote that I absolutely love by Anais Nin, got that right, in which you say, the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom, which I really, really loved. I think it's such a powerful, evocative phrase or term around change is really fucking hard, but there does come a point when not changing is so much harder and is so much heavier. And I love that your book, I guess, kind of charts your process after that moment in which that weight became too much to bear. And you thought, okay, I have to actually begin that process and begin to develop the 48 methods. I said that I wanted to look at how these methods can be applied to thinking about sex and dating and relationships. But I guess we have to first understand what your own relationship was like to sex. And I laugh because whenever you and I talk about sex, we have such a different experience of sex. How we have related to sex, how we see it, our experience of sex is so vastly different. I'm like, yeah, wasn't it so awful growing up? Didn't you feel so traumatized?
I'm like, no, I loved it.
You're like, I loved wanking. And I'm like, I only discovered masturbation at like 20. And Sharmadean was like, what? So tell us then, Shah, what was your relationship like to sex and to self-pleasure growing up?
So I think it's really great that we get to have this conversation. And you're right, like our experiences of sex are so different, but for better or worse. So bear with me while I tell you the entire history of my sex life. Firstly, I want to say that I have had the same-ish or similar body since I was 13 years old. So my experience of sex first comes from being over-sexualized as a young woman, which I think is very common in the black community. You know, we talk about the adultification of black girls, not only through the household labor or the being the eldest brown daughter syndrome, but you are sexualized from a very young age. And that's because you look a certain way, but also you're expected to perform in a certain way. And when I look back, we talk about this all the time. I'm one of the few people who I know who have never experienced a kind of sexual trauma. So what I mean by that is, and I think Claire is here, who did the UN Women report, where it was like 97% of women have been harassed or experienced sexual violence. Obviously, well, it's sad to say, obviously, but I've been harassed on the street, yes, by men who will catcall me. But it's in this kind of way of womanly appreciation that I don't find as offensive, if that makes sense. It's hard, you know, like I said, bear with me because this is a complex issue, isn't it? That said, because I haven't experienced a sexual trauma or violence, as in I haven't been assaulted or, you know, felt physically attacked, and I was raised in a very Jamaican household where sex is seen as almost a romantic form of communication. So if anyone's been to Jamaica or listens to dancehall music, you know that when Vybz Kartel is saying, your pussy's so sweet, it's like Romeo and Juliet level love letter. Because in Jamaica, it's such an outwardly sexual culture in a womanly appreciative way. Like they love flesh, and if you're skinny growing up, that's actually a negative. So we have a word for it called marga, which is not positive. You don't want to be marga. If you're a marga gal, it's not seen as a positive thing. So they love big, vibrant, sexy women. So when I was 13 and blooming in my puberty, it was seen as like an appreciation. I can genuinely say I never felt like a victim in my sexuality ever. My mother is also incredibly vivacious. She's like super tall, like 5'9", 5'10". She had the most insane body, like Amazonian. In fact, I look like her now. She looked like Patra. She looked like a dancehall queen, right? And she had me at 16, so she was very young, and she'd be pushing my brother in the pushchair with her calf muscles and her bum, and like men would literally follow her down the street. And we never were scared. It wasn't like a fear. It was seen as like, oh, whatever. And also, she, I guess, in her curiosity in her youth, she had quite a lot, and also it was the 80s, 90s, she had quite a lot of sex literature around the house. So I remember reading The Joy of Sex as a kid. Do you remember that famous book?
Obviously, I did not grow up with that.
She had a copy in the house.
Really?
So I remember reading it. She had porn magazines. I remember reading, like, not porn, but you know, like how Playboy would have essays in, like long form essays. I remember reading erotic literature and essays like in the house. And I remember I'm really digging the archives now of my brain. She had this little cartoon book, which was a bit like, almost like a Viz. Do you remember Viz, right? It was like a Viz cartoon book of like sexual comic innuendos. And it was like, I'll never forget this because as a child, I remember that's weird. Librans, it was a Zodiac one. It said Librans like to be kissed on the elbow. Because obviously it was taking the piss out of Zodiac bullshit, yeah. And I remember thinking, Librans like to be kissed on the elbow? What does that mean? Anyway, that was the era that I grew up in, which meant that I was always very confident in my sexuality. But I was also quite tomboy, so I played football. I wore trousers to school every day. So at school, I never had a boyfriend, never kissed anyone at school. I wasn't, like, that wasn't part of my schooling experience. I was like the girl in trousers who played football, who everyone could have a laugh with. That was my role. When I was 16 and I lost my virginity, all hell broke loose. I loved having sex. I loved it. I thought it was great. So between the ages of 16 and 18, I had so much sex. Loads.
That was the era in which I became so terrified of sex. I had penetrative sex the first time and I was like, and thereafter it was like,
well, I had
every time.
I had that with alcohol because I got really
I liked
drunk.
Alcohol. I chased boys
but
in
I
bands.
think this is cultural.
Yeah,
it's English versus Jamaican. Like, I had a drink when I was like 14. I threw up all night. I was like, I'm never drinking again. So you just had that for sex. Yeah. And I didn't drink again until I was like 19 or something, like for ages. So it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? So I had so much sex between the ages of 16 and 18 and just loved it and was experimenting and like discovering. And I felt like, and this is where it starts, where I can now start to reflect on it. I loved the power it gave me. And I've spoken to you about this before. To me, I felt men can be controlled quite simply with sex. And I was like, ding! I know how to get a bit of power in my life. And, I'm a vivacious person. I loved clubbing, dancing, and I just liked meeting people and having fun with them.
And how did that exertion of power work with the guys that you were fucking?
We all remember being in a club on the dance floor and you're dancing and you catch someone's eye. And I'd be like, it's the best feeling ever, isn't it? And I can say this because it was like 35 years ago. No,
look at that 25. Now. I'm like, yes, you can see my nipples.
You're having my youth because now I'm old.
Now I'm sexually liberated.
Now she's sexually liberated.
I'm like wearing my sexuality.
Yeah,
like,
and
it's
I'm
the most
the
expensive
opposite.
piece of clothing I own.
I'm the opposite. I hardly have any sex now, so
I mean, I'm not saying I'm actually having much sex,
all right.
but I'm thinking about it. And when I'm in the club, which is not that often, I am wearing my sexuality very loudly and proudly.
When I was 18, I met my first boyfriend, and then I was with my boyfriend. So I think what's also quite a Gemini trait is we are quite monogamous, like loyal. Once we like someone, I think it's a bit of laziness. So once I'm with someone, I then just am with that person, if that makes sense. So when I'm not with someone, I'm happy to like have sex, but when I'm with someone, I just want to have sex as much as possible with that one person.
See, this is where I've been let down, because I've had my sexual revolution and haven't had a long-term partner since. Whoever gets the privilege.
Getting eaten alive.
Imagine!
I had my first boyfriend. We had a really good relationship, and then we moved to London together. And I remember the first time he didn't want to have sex because he was really stressed at uni. We were both at uni. I was at St Martin's, nothing to be stressed about there, hardly do anything. And he was really stressed and he didn't want to have sex. And I felt like a dagger had hit my chest.
Did you feel like he'd taken away your power?
I felt the first sense of rejection.
And that was the first time you'd experienced rejection?
Apart from my father, my absent father, which the whole book's about. But, you know, like, it was the first time that I experienced rejection. And I'll never forget one of my dorm mates saying, just get into bed naked and he won't be able to not have sex. And I did that and it did work, but it felt like a trick. It felt like a cheap trick. Do you know what I mean? And I remember thinking, wow, I'm putting way too much emphasis on his desire to have sex with me. And I think the reason I didn't actually put it in the book is because I dealt with it when I was 23. As in, like, I had that thought later on, like, so early that it wasn't part of my methods. But actually, it's a really important part, because what I realised was that for me, sex is and was part of a self-soothing mechanism to be like, I am wanted, attractive, accepted, desired, and validated. And it was a huge part of the validation I felt in my daily life, because, you know, I'm older now, but when I was younger, if I walked down the street, men would always be looking at me. All the time. No, but I mean, like, I care less now, because, you know, when you're sometimes I see girls now who are like 25, 26, and they've got knee-high boots and a skirt on, and I'm like, oh, you guys look so cute. I'm so happy I don't have to wear those clothes anymore. But I
just think, God, you look so cold.
Yeah, you look
so
cold. But we did that. Like, when I look at photos of me doing...
like 10 coats on at all times. I was
no.
This is why I wasn't having
sex.
And
you had the bags.
I had the bags and the coats.
You had the bags
but
and the
Shani,
coats.
Can I just say, actually, it's so interesting the way you described that, because I think I only ever chased men who didn't like me. That was just my thing. I only liked people who didn't like me back, and I became totally... That Gemini monogamy you talked about there, yes, but I applied it to people who weren't with me. So I was like innately, deeply monogamous with the like one person who just did not like me and was never going to like me and only wanted to sleep with all my friends. When you describe that having been the kind of root for your, or a kind of core pillar of your validation, it's so interesting hearing that, because I think for me it was the absolute reverse. It was the thing that reminded me or made me feel that I was unlovable and that people didn't want me and that I wasn't sexual, because I was, in my mind, because of the way I decided to spend my love, I was always being rejected. And then when I had sex, it was not good.
But my take on that was, what you described, that feeling of unlovable, I had with my father. Just for clarity, my mum had me at 16, and I'm half Jamaican, half Indian. My father's Indian. I don't know who he is. I don't know his name. And it was this, like, thing that no one spoke about, and no one still does speak about it really. But I had really loving grandfather and I had really loving family, but there was always this part of me that just wondered, because also I look quite different when I was younger to my brothers and sisters, you know, so I always had this part of me that was like unknown. And then your brain is like, well, if my primary caregiver, who is meant to automatically love me, doesn't love me, how can I get love guaranteed? I can get love guaranteed by being sexy. And I've always been sexy, and I've always been sexual, and I've always demanded my pleasure. I remember once having sex with a guy that I was with for a while, and, you know, you wake up in the night and then you fumble around, and I always say this to my boyfriends, right? If you wake up in the night and you want to have sex, I will have sex.
I was thinking that not expressing it, but the other day.
I just let them know. I just say, if you wake up, it's all right. We can have sex. So he woke up in the night and he wakes me up to have sex and I'm having sex. But he's doing it so robotically. I went, can you stop? This is boring. And he went, no one's ever done that to me before. But you're right. I am being mechanic and I'm not thinking about you because I'm half asleep. But the fact that I feel confident enough to have the power to say it, and then we had sex how we should have sex. But I think there's so many times when I hear my friends talk about bad sex, craps, sex where they didn't like it. God forbid sex where you don't have an orgasm.
I mean, how much time do we have on the orgasm gap?
I literally say, if I'm dating someone and I don't orgasm like more than 2 times in a row, I just say, listen, this is not cool. I say, I am not having sex where I don't orgasm. Like, I'm just not doing it. So it's like,
Sex Talk's wrapped. That's all we have to say, everybody.
But it's really the essay that I probably, because like I said, there's so many things I want to say about sex in terms of understanding that you can love it, understanding that it was also a bit negative because I was using it as a validation, understanding that I don't have to use sex as validation, and my partner, when he was stressed, I have since been stressed and also understood having a low libido when you're stressed, and a good relationship is where you both feel safe enough so that he doesn't feel the pressure. I have been called a sex pest at times. So I now understand that the pressure we put on men to deliver that performance is just as bad as him expecting me to lie back and take it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Totally.
But then also, I think there's something really important about prioritizing your pleasure. My pleasure, and I don't just mean in sex, in life, as you well know, I like things just so. I like a nice smell, a nice room. This idea of moving away from pain and towards pleasure is really important to me. Like, my pleasure's important, so therefore I'm going to verbalize when I'm not experiencing it from the person who should be kindest, loving to me. So I think these things are really, really important to reflect on and talk about. Like, what are they doing for you?
And yes.
And what are you doing for yourself?
100%. And with that, as you're saying that, Shar, I'm just thinking, we've spoken a lot at Sex Talks previously about how confidence in the bedroom builds confidence in the boardroom. And I certainly felt prior to doing sex therapy and having my sexual revolution, I felt prior to that there was this part of me, there was this element of myself that was dysfunctional. I couldn't orgasm in partnered sex. I didn't like sex. I had a really bad relationship to my body and I felt really broken. And it's only with hindsight that I can see how that trickled into other aspects of my life. The public persona of me was always confident and bubbly and chatty, but in a kind of overcompensatory sort of way. It really needed you to like me, and I talked really, really fast all the time, and I over-prepared for everything, and it was kind of this, just everything was an overcompensation. And I think there was, because there was this feeling, not at a conscious level, an unconscious level, that there was a bit of me that was just broken, that just did not work. And it was in doing sex therapy that I began to rebuild that connection to myself that I'd never really had, because I'd had this eating disorder that like really broken up my relationship to my body and hence to sex. And so as you're talking there, I'm just wondering, you've always had this kind of unrivaled confidence and kind of vision and determination in what you've done. I mean, you set up One Nails in your early 20s. You've always run your own businesses. You've raised huge amounts of money, 5 million plus for your businesses. You've always been someone who has just pushed and seemingly had this abundance of self-confidence. Do you think those two things are linked? Do you think that confidence in the bedroom with yourself, with your body, with your pleasure has been a pillar behind that outward confidence?
Firstly, I take it back to my Jamaican upbringing, which is Jamaicans are well overconfident. Like, there's two things that always make me think about the confidence. There's a shack that I drive past in Montego Bay, and it's literally a shack about as big as that speaker box. And on the front, it says Future Walmart. And that's all you need. That is all you need to know about the Jamaican confidence. And then the other thing, there's a song by Christopher something called I'm a Big Deal. When you go home tonight, you're walking home, you're on the tube, whatever, I urge you to listen to that song. The lyrics are, I'm a big deal, Me and my friends are a big deal. We're very, very, very important, for real. And I love it. And this is like some kids in the hood in Jamaica. And that is the confidence of being Jamaican. And I was surrounded by that 24/7. And the second thing I'll say is, when I am with a partner, in a relationship, having sex every day, I am so much happier at work. I don't know if I'm confident, but I'm happy. I go to work with a spring in my step.
I bet you do.
I feel whole and safe. And it's hard for me to say if it's the wiring in my brain. So you remember I talked earlier about self-soothing. So I do think that your neural pathways are always developing, right? And your brain is developing till you're 25. So if you think about all the sex I was having between 16 and 25, my neural pathway is created to say, sex feels nice, sex feels good. You are powerful when you are having sex. So that is my brain pathway now. And the thing I had to unlearn was the validation part, which I unlearned pretty quickly, actually. But like for you, you've had to unlearn sex is bad, sex is painful, because that teenage experiences that you've had have shaped and wired your brain. So I think that when I have sex, my brain is still underlying says, you're so cool and powerful and sexy. Go forth and do great work.
Next time you're having sex, I urge you all to have Sharmadean Reid's line going through your head. Yes, this is good. Go forth.
But not if it's not, though.
No, I mean, obviously you don't want to fake it.
And you know, I don't orgasm through oral sex, if that makes you feel better.
Oh, that's...
See? We all are different, and that's the point. It's like, it's really, going back to the book, I constantly say, understand what works for you and do what's right for you, and what you'll find about the book is there's a constant process of self-questioning. I feel that there is an abundance of women's literature about feelings and emotions, because that's how we communicate and that's how we tell stories. Stories are human and emotional. What I'm really curious about now is, how do you think and how do you make decisions? Because I feel like that is not part of the canon of literature for women. So, we have a journal club every Sunday on the Stat, because I want people to write their own methods. I want you to say, here's what I like, here's what I don't like, this works for me, this doesn't work for me, and then actually action it. So, I will say, just like I said to someone, if you want to wake me up in the night and have sex, it's okay. But it's not okay for me to not have an orgasm twice in a row, and setting your boundary around that and being firm and being able to verbalize it, because we don't often use our voices to say what we want. So I just think it's really about knowing what works for you. And if you're not having good sex, don't trick yourself into being like, I'm enjoying this. I've watched I love film and TV, did anyone watch Bad Sisters? It was so brilliant, right? And there were so many times, I don't want to spoil it, but there were so many times when Grace, I could see in her incredible acting that she's trying to convince herself that this is okay, that I like this, that this is the life I wanted, until she finally, doesn't want to do it anymore. And I just think as women, we do that a lot. We try and convince ourselves, this is okay. I can put up with this. I'm strong enough to take it. Let's not bother these people. I don't want to bother. I don't want to be a disruption. I don't want to bother anyone. Let me just, I'll figure it out later. And I'm like, fuck no. Life is way too short to be constantly on the back foot, constantly taking it. And, if you can outline your decision-making process and your thought process, you can avoid making poor decisions, and you can avoid having thoughts that are resentful and bitter. Because it got taken out of the book, right, because I didn't like the design. But there was a graphic, if anyone knows me, it's very me. I designed this timeline, which I sent to you guys.
I love it.
And I feel it's an accurate timeline of the heroine's journey. And it was like around 35 or 36, I see women taking two paths. They take a path where they're deciding to make this change. They're starting the path of healing, of self-work, of self-development, or the path of bitterness and resentment. And then they go down this bitter path, and before they know it, they're 45 and they hate their life. And I just think that's because they're not saying what they want. They're not saying what they want. They're not reflecting on how they feel. And for many of us in the room, it might have been our mums. You know, it might have been our mothers who just said, it's okay. Everyone else can do what's important to them, and I'll be the donkey in the room, you know? And the mum is the donkey doing everything. That. And then before you know it, they are 50 drinking gin on a Sunday morning and hating their life. And I just didn't want to be like that person.
And I think it always comes back to something I've been mulling over and writing about quite a lot recently, about the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves shape how we engage with the world, how we interpret our experiences, how we interpret our relationships with other people. It's these stories, and you've told a variety of actually different stories this evening, but one of which around your relationship to sex. It's a very positive story, and it's a story that shaped, therefore, how you saw yourself as a sexual being. But I just wonder, this is something you talk about in the book. You've talked and written about swinging between anxious and then avoidant attachment styles. And I just wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how that core belief has manifested in the way that you approach and experience romantic relationships.
Sure. So the belief that I can only rely on myself really comes from, you know, having this absent father, and then I had this kind of crazy school experience where I left the house at 6 a.m. every day to go to a school 20 miles away, and then came home at 7 p.m. and basically was left to my own devices for most of my childhood. And what it meant was that I had this real obsession with being financially and mentally secure by myself. So my workaholism really started at age 14 when I did my first waitressing job and got my first £20 note, crisp £20 note. I was like, I'm rich. And I was like, wow, I can buy shit. I don't have to ask anyone for anything. And that feeling, age 14, has stayed with me all the way to now. I can only rely on myself, so I need to be financially secure and mentally secure to not need to ask anyone for money, and to not feel that I'm a loser if I'm not with a partner. You know, those two things I think are really key. If any of you are single and you go to bed every night thinking, I'm going to die alone, that was me. And then I just did these methods, and now it's not. But it was a really core part of my belief, which is like, I can't rely on anyone for anything, therefore I need to hoard to keep myself safe. So everything.
By hoard, what do you mean? What are you hoarding?
Knowledge, power, money, stuff, the ability to, if I'm lonely, go and have a facial and a massage. It's a hoarding of things. So there's an essay on numbing behavior in there as well. And everything I talk about tonight has, the revelation of it has both its positives and negatives, right? Because I think there is a positive as a woman in being financially independent. And actually, I've written a proposal for my second book already, and it's really about that. It's really about, like, how do you truly have autonomy? It's by having this mental and financial security. So there's a positive in that. But then the negative is, I've got my stuff and you're not allowed in. No one, if you come in my space, you know that Whoopi Goldberg meme when she says, I don't want to be married because I don't want anyone in my house. I was like, that is me.
I think that's me too at this point.
That is me. I don't want anyone in my house. I don't ever want to be potentially vulnerable to being financially or emotionally ruined. Those two things that I said.
And that's a big thing of love. You'll trust your heart with someone else, and that with that runs the risk that they can completely break it. And it's the biggest. It is the worst.
It's the worst. Why would we do that?
It's terrifying. And also every
orgasms.
And every time my sister who's not here yet, she's always like, be more vulnerable, and then I'm fucking more vulnerable. And guess what happens? They dump me.
I know, but this is the work for my life post 40. But what I will say is that what you're describing is the anxious attachment. I want to be attached and partnered, and I was incredibly anxious. So there's a whole chapter in the book, Method 5, Label Your Trauma, where I talk about my discovery that I was codependent. You know, someone told me I was codependent. I was like, not me. Like, what is this? I didn't say not me, actually. Once they told me what it was, I was like, yeah, that's me. And then I went to SLA, to Sex Love Addicts, for years. Loved it.
Which is like AA, basically, but for people with...
But I think everyone should go, because I've never been to anything that's so human and loving. And I just, every time I was in there, I thought, this is all my friends. All my friends should be here, because they're all talking about boys every 24/7.
My friend did go though, and she said that the group went around and they were all like, yeah, I've been like prosecuted for being a stalker. Someone else had been like, yeah, I have to have sex like 25 times a day. And then it got to her and she was like, I just keep falling in love and I'm obsessed with boys. But I think everyone turned to her and they were like,
no, don't be. She's dramatized. Don't be scared.
She loves a bit of drama.
I actually found it weirdly normal. I found it the opposite. If anyone has been to SLA, it's weirdly normal. It's everyone who's a fantasist. It's everyone who's at work thinking about a boy that they saw on the internet that they've met once.
And then they're designing their future life with them. And
writing
all the conversations that they have with them. So then you think you've had the conversation, so you think you know them really well, but you've not had one conversation.
But you don't. And a lot of it is fantasists, actually. Anyway, you know, not selling SLA.
Can you, she's selling SLA. Can you just describe for us what codependency is, just for anyone who's not sure?
So I don't know what the dictionary definition of codependency is, but the way that I read it is that you are anxiously attached and you put your partner before anything else. So your brain is always thinking about your partner, and it may or may not be in an obsessive way. It's like you start dating someone, before you know it, all their friends are your friends. You dress like them. You're planning on moving to their city. When do they move to your city? You're always if this is your circle, you're always out of your circle moving towards them rather than them moving towards you. And I remember when I separated from my son's father, the first thing I thought was, wow, I've got weekends free because I don't have to go to every single family, christening, wedding, because it's always me coming out of my circle and doing everything they want to do. And I just think, how many of us have lost girlfriends to partners?
I think is as a perennially curious person, though, I do get so fascinated getting to like press my nose up against the window of someone else's life, and I want to go to all your things.
No,
like,
I get it.
I could become a rugby player.
When do they
ever do it to me?
They never do it the other way around. They never are like.
But they're kind of like a little tour guide to another life, and I have my tour, and then I like step out the fantasy, and I'm like, whoa, no, I was not meant to be a pro cyclist.
But also no one, what boyfriend do you have that's like becomes curious about your hobbies and then starts doing them? Do you get what I mean? Like, so anyway.
Sometimes they read a bit more. Or they tell me they do.
But I just feel like it's an obsession or a preoccupation rather with your partner to fill this void. And the core thing was that I had this disposition because of emotional neglect as a child, right? I had this hole that I needed to fill, and I filled it with my partner, and I loved it. I loved being obsessed with my boyfriend. I loved talking about them. My friends didn't, you know, but I loved it, and they were obsessed with me, and I loved that as well, but in a different way, you know. I was very anxiously attached, and then when I realised what was happening, because I love rational experimentation, I swung to the extreme other end. I swung to the avoidant end, which is, this is my circle and you ain't coming in, you know? And I became, and I still kind of am, but I'm okay with it, quite selfish. So I think right now when I date, people are very surprised by how little I give a shit about. I actually surprised myself, because if someone said to me, you know, I'm really into hiking, I would be like, let's organise a hiking trip. And now I'm like, okay, cool, see you later. And And that's me knowing that I'm more in the secure zone now.
I've like ordered the boots already. I'm like, do we need polls? Are we pole
saying.
people?
That's what I'm saying. And I feel now that I'm securely attached, but I can't quite tell until I meet someone I am passionate about, because I haven't really been in love I can't even remember what that means. But I think I need to test now. When I meet someone, and I'll report back, when I meet someone that I fall in love with, that will be the true test of whether I've healed or not, because I don't know if I have the capability of not being obsessed. But I think I do, because I feel quite relaxed and healed, and I don't feel anxious. I don't feel it in my chest. I don't feel it in my stomach. You know, that stomach feeling when someone tells you, oh, your ex-boyfriend's dating this new supermodel. I'm like, okay, cool. Whereas before I would have been like, ugh, and like, you know, now I just don't care. So I think, okay, it's working. But what I will say is that I'm very stubborn in my desire to maintain my life, because now my life is full. And I remember Oprah Winfrey used to say, if someone says you're full of yourself, that's the best thing ever. Fill me up, because I'm not waiting for you to fill me up. I'm full. I'm full of myself. I don't have the void. So now, because I am so full of myself and I feel that my life is full, my partner should be additive and we should meet in the middle together. And I do want to be partnered, and I do want a husband, and I'm really excited about being in love. And to me, what this book was getting me to a place where I felt secure and ready enough. If I'd met my like dream husband when I was 28, I'd fuck it up. I was a mess, so I wouldn't have been able to handle it.
I'd be divorced for sure.
Yeah, I'd be divorced. But I feel I'm ready now.
Do you find it difficult in all aspects of your life? You are a leader, as I said before, the kind of the visionary, the head of the group, the head of the company, you're badass boss bitch. But in the context of dating and relationships, it often requires us to be something quite different, to access that vulnerability that is really goddamn hard. Yeah. Do you find it hard to go into that space of vulnerability?
Speaking of more Gemini memes, my favourite Gemini meme is, you gotta let her be a boss and a baby. And I'm attracted to men who are confident in themselves enough that they don't feel the need to either belittle me, but they are also ready to soothe me and look after me when I'm ready, if that makes sense. I've often said I have no issue being a housewife. People don't believe this about me because it looks like I'm a workaholic. But if someone could pay for my life, you know, I'd figure out a way to squirrel that money away to keep my independence. But I love being a mom so much. Like, being a mom has been lovely. I love it. I love being a partner. I love being a girlfriend and a wife. And you can fill up your time with that stuff, you know. If I was independently wealthy, I wouldn't work for fun. I wouldn't.
You love making decks.
Yeah, but
I struggle to imagine the day when you're not up at midnight making a deck.
I'm not up at midnight. That was my old life. I'm 40 now as of yesterday or 2 days ago. This is my new season 2 life. I work a couple of hours a day. I've got a lot of work on at the moment, obviously, because I'm doing this book, but I really enjoy being with my family, growing my herbs, sleeping till 8 a.m., new for me. But you've got to reduce your desires and living expenses to do that. And the reason why I talk about money so much is because money really is the gateway to choice. But I say to my son all the time, so my son's very the opposite to me and his dad. He's completely unmaterialistic. He doesn't like logos. He often says to me, how do I live off grid? Or like, how do I, he said, when I explained capitalism to him, he went, oh, that's the word for the thing that I feel I don't like.
Wow.
And
Gen Z or Alpha?
Alpha.
Gen Alpha will save us.
Yeah, and I said to him something, and this is why being a mum is great. I said to him in that conversation, do you know what the key thing is? And as I was saying it to him, if anyone's got a child, sometimes you talk to your child and you're really talking to yourself. You know, you're giving the advice yourself. I said to him, if you want to reduce your dependency on other people, you just have to reduce your desires for things. And I just think what I've done now in my season 2 is I've reduced my desires for things. I've basically halved my living expenses by leaving London and moving to the countryside, which means that I can choose how much I want to work, who I want to work with. And if I don't earn as much money, it's okay because I don't have all of these expenses. And I think that freedom of choice is key. I saw, a video on the internet about a woman who lives alone, and she's saying she's the first in her infinite generation of women, her matrilineal line, to ever live alone because she has the power to do so. And she said, my mum couldn't leave because she never had money to leave, and now I can. So I think going back to sex talks, the ability to choose your pleasure, choose how you want to design your life, choose how you want to work, who you want to work with, who you want to have in your friend circle, is so intertwined with this capitalist world that you have to make a choice. What is the trade-off here? You know what I'm saying? I think about it a lot. I think about what economic power does give you, and how many women I know who have limited choices because of their lack of economic power. And if any of you are more interested in this, there's an incredible podcast that is just like a low-key podcast called the Feminist Finance Podcast by a woman called Alice something. There's an episode by Helen White, who is a policy designer for big government insurance policy. And she talks in this podcast about how she has to design government policy, and she feels compelled to do it because she has seen thousands of women get divorced and end up in poverty. She said divorce is the number one way that women get into poverty because they have nothing. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine you've given your entire life
to someone,
to raising children, to raising a family, and then you're divorced and you have nothing? My life's work is gender equity, and it makes me feel so sick and angry that there are women who don't have this choice, who don't have this freedom, because they haven't been able to build that financial security, and it makes me feel sick thinking about it.
In a way, is that kind of then... So I was going to ask, as someone who has built women's communities and women's networks the past 15 years, and as someone who loves data and collecting data and is always collecting information as you do, I just wondered, kind of, as you've gone through this healing journey, whether you have become more cognizant of the behaviour patterns that women around you perhaps end up falling into or repeating, and not in a judgmental way, just kind of observing those patterns when it comes to relationships, when it comes to those kind of relationship dynamics you're talking about, that perhaps are quite detrimental to them, and you can kind of see that pattern happening, perhaps you recognise it in yourself. And what I'm hearing from you now is we're talking a lot about kind of the economic kind of issues that people come up against when it comes to marriage, for example. But yeah, I wondered if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about maybe any of those patterns that you've seen and how we can essentially try and avoid them. What I'm really asking from you
what is it? Just ask me.
Hot dating advice, basically. Based on being a data collecting individual, I want the best dating advice you think you now have after 15 years of data collection and a lot of self-healing.
I think the mistake I see in the people I know is a lack of just saying, what do I want? It's very simple, and it again is the root of the book. What do I want? So what I see more commonly, and I also was susceptible to, was the first person that just doesn't seem like a monster. You're like, that'll do.
All your expectations have been so beaten down that you're like,
wow, you asked me a question? You made
me come.
You're a genius. Let's get married right now because you asked me a question. You know when you watch those pickup artists and they tell you, just ask women questions? And you're like, wow, it's true. We're so, we're basic in that way. We just are so devoid of appreciation that...
Like he texts you back and you're
like...
Oh
my God, he texts back?
He texts back. What an absolute babe.
So I have a pattern of my dating style is this. I don't meet anyone off dating apps unless I am 90% sure that I will like them. So, oh my God, Em's dating is so funny.
Anyone who's come to sex talks before knows I've gone on a litany.
She's an Olympic level dater. She's done like 3 dates in one night before. I remember meeting you, and you had a 5 to 7 p.m. session, and then she met me for a drink, and she had an evening session, and I was like, how'd you date? That's mad.
Girls know what she wants. Actually, no. I think that's probably the opposite.
Yeah, but it was really. But I go on the dating apps and I do not arrange to meet anyone unless I'm really sure that I will like them. And then 99% of the time, we go on one date, that person's my boyfriend. All of them. You know the names, you know the names.
Know, but
it's true though.
It's so true, and it happens fast. I am persistence over resistance. I cannot deal with any more admin in my life. So when it comes to dating, particularly from the apps, I honestly, it's a person who just keeps on fucking asking. They just keep messaging
the wear
me.
You down.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, okay. I guess we should. And if they're kind of marginally funny, if they get me on their poetry and prose, I am like,
yeah. But think about other situations where like a man might be wearing a woman down, and you're like, okay, then, like, you know.
No, I recognise that as not a great pattern.
Don't get worn down.
No,
don't get worn down.
And it's mainly just because I genuinely forget.
It's really about knowing what you want. And I've got, I talk in the book about doing vision setting. We do vision setting every year in the Stat World membership community. And there's a whole section on your partner. And what people tend to do is start listing attributes like he's 6'7", he's in the army, he's got both legs.
Love a man with legs.
Just basic arbitrary shit.
Throw in some eyes and we are talking.
Yeah, but that's not it, babe. It's in decay, remember? So what I urge people to write is how the partner makes them feel. This partner makes me feel safe. They make me feel I can achieve anything. They make me feel loved. They make me feel that, how does your partner make you feel? How do you make your partner feel? I can see some Stat members here, so you've all done this, haven't you? And it's way better than saying, here's a checkbox of random attributes that I think is my perfect partner. So when I say the mistake is most people don't know what they want, is they'll say to me, oh, should I live in this area or that area? And I'm like, I don't know. What do you want? Like, make a list. What's your criteria? It can irritate some people in my life with my obsessive decision-making framework for everything, but it reduces my cognitive load. So today I was feeling very stressed and very depleted, but I knew that if I go to this one Vietnamese and have a beef soup, I will be revived because I've done it 25 times. I don't need to look in my phone and be like, where's the restaurant that I need to go to get food? Do you get what I'm saying? So I'm like logging all of the things that revive me. And I think when it comes to your partner and it comes to dating, all of you tonight should literally be writing, what is it I want? And do not write a single physical. Well, actually, I did put my guy's a physically large guy because I think that's important for me. But like,
I would second that in all aspects.
They just need to be big, right? But
big hands.
I just think it's important to say, why do I need a physically large guy? Because feeling safe is quite important for me, and I have this thing of like, if there was a zombie apocalypse, could my husband save us? And that's like a core thing for me.
I'll save you. I work out every goddamn day. I will save you.
Yeah, sure, you'd be good. You'd be you'd be climbing the walls and shit. So, I want everyone to write what they want, and whether it's in relationships, whether it's in their job. If you guys have any friends that ask you a question like, what should I do, ... say, write down 5 things that are important to you about this decision and give them the work. They're looking to you to solve your problem. Tell them, new method 1, guys, the answer is within you. You already know what you want. You just need someone to kind of help you uncover it, or you need to find the quiet space to do it, because only you know what works for you. You know what I'm saying?
What a brilliant last point to end on, because I do want to take a break now before we have questions. But I think, just to reflect back on that, I think that is such an incredible piece of advice and kind of general wisdom, actually, when it comes to love and sex and dating, is being really clear on what you want, not what you think you should want, not what you think you might want, not what you want them to look like in the checklist that we have, but to be really clear on what you want, to how you want to feel. And this is something that's come up in sex talks before. And one thing that I have learned since, I think it was Roxy mentioned that notion of like being leaning into how you feel a few months ago. I ignored her and I ignored that advice. Not because I didn't think it was good, just because
you've got to unlearn
I
it.
met a guy who ticked all the attribute boxes, and I remember thinking, I just want to share this, I really, really liked this person, and because of everything on paper that he represented, and he was smart and funny and said nice things, what I completely ignored the entire time we were together is how goddamn anxious I felt. And I think it was a lesson maybe that could have been learned a few months prior if I just listened. But
no, have compassion for yourself, because like I said, we're all unlearning this thing.
Yeah.
I know we need to take a break, but one of the things we were going to talk about is mythology and how myth making has really determined how we operate as women today. And you can't blame yourself for not falling trapped to, this is my savior, Prince Charming, when we have been told since we were basically born through every Cinderella, every Disney, every myth, that there is a really strapping lad out there waiting to save you. And when you see them packaged up, by the way, in that very Eurocentric strapping man package, and I say that as also a minority, I was raised in a culture where my idea of the savior dream man is a white, blonde, strapping man, because they're everywhere in every, look, imagine being a kid and watching Pocahontas and thinking, is John Smith coming to save me? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, that's not healthy, but that's what we've been given. So it's not your fault if you were susceptible to a Eurocentric strapping man coming to save you. But all you do, the way I describe methods and work and all of that is like an elastic band around my wrist. I don't have one, which is not how often it doesn't start stretching to poor decision making, but how far does it stretch before I let go and realize I've made a mistake? And what I would say you should be proud of yourself for is at least you're not dating him, married to him, having a kid before you realize I don't even like this guy. So you let the elastic band go quite quickly, and it hurts less, doesn't it, guys?
It hurts
far less when you let it go quicker.
Let it go and shut the door and never, ever, ever look back. Seriously,
but if you carry on, it's really painful. So I just think, don't berate yourself for poor decision making, because we have been told all the time this is how we ought to make decisions. And now I'm just like, the package for my dream man might not look like how I was told by myths and media and Disney and all of this. He might look quite different, and I might just, Charlotte York and Harry Goldenblatt. That's all I'm going to say.
He might be like a Lord Farquaad, but that's okay. Okay? We can rebrand our Prince Charming.
He might be like Frodo, and that's okay.
And that's okay. Because you know what? If he's a good, nice lad
who cares for you,
cares and who
makes you feel safe,
then
is going to be present for you, present for your children, if you choose to have any, and not destroy your brain space and cause anxiety.
Frodo, if you're listening, here's my number. I'll leave it at the end. I'll leave it at the end of the podcast. We are going to have a very quick break. This person's written, after 4 years of dating, in brackets, I mean in quotation marks, I feel you, fuck boys, I'm now dating someone intentionally and with aligned values, but it feels boring.
Oh,
underlined with an exclamation point. My nervous system feels relaxed or something.
Yeah, I knew it, relaxed.
And I feel safe. But I'm so used to thriving off the heightened sexual energy those feelings have only ever dominated. It's slow and steady, what I want. But I miss the toxic behaviour I want and need to steer away from.
Did you write this? What's the question?
I could have done. I think the question is, what the fuck am I doing?
I feel you. And thank you so much for that, because I think we're all laughing because we can relate, right? That's what comedy is.
I think 100%.
I have an essay called Prove Yourself Wrong, which is precisely about this. It's instead of proving yourself right, I'm going to date a fuckboy who's unavailable to prove that I am unlovable, right? Because that's what we do. We date shit people to prove we're unlovable. By dating someone different, you are proving yourself wrong. And like I said earlier, you are rewiring your brain to be like, this is possible to have and to maintain. What I will say is there's a very thin line between a safe and boring. It's very thin. I have proved myself wrong by dating someone who didn't activate my anxieties, etc. However, it's not quite the relationship I wanted. And I think in an effort to swing the pendulum from fuckboy to good boy, I swung it so far that I forgot what I wanted. And it's about going back to that list of things that you want that are important. So you know now, anonymous person, you know that you are capable of doing this, which is just the first step. You're capable. But now you need to look at all the other attributes. Yes, your nervous system's relaxed, tick. You feel safe, tick. Are you excited? Are you passionate? Are you inspired? Add some other things underneath to keep the test going, because well done for proving yourself wrong, but don't lose yourself in the process.
Oh, God, that was good advice. When I was at a retreat, a writers thing recently, I met this woman who had just got engaged, and she said, because I said, I was talking about the fuckboys, and I was like, I want to wake up next to someone who's excited to be there. I mean, it's a low bar, but yeah. Who is really like, damn, I'm happy to be next to you. And
you're a queen, you're a goddess, and I'm so happy and privileged to be next to you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what I want for my husband.
That is what I want them to say in the morning, like, wow. And I'm like, oh, this old thing. Oh, it's my naked body. But I said, I want them to like wake up excited. And she was like, yes, 100%. You want that passion, you want that desire. But the passion and the desire, it fades over time. You want to be with someone who you're proud of. You want to be with someone who, when you introduce them to friends, you introduce them to colleagues, you're proud of who they are and who they want to be. And I thought that was great advice.
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I love seeing old people who still hold hands, old people who still pinch each other's bum. I don't know if that, again, I think this is a myth of settling. And I think maybe, for me, I do, in case you didn't know, I like sex, and I do want to be 60 and 70 and still feel turned on by my partner. And I love watching old people, like memes of them still fancying each other. Memes are so good. I just think it is possible. I was very lucky my grandparents were together until they passed away, and they had 13 kids, yo. If they fancied each other, I just think that I don't want the passion to die, and I don't want to feel like I'm asking for a lot just to fancy my partner all the time. Yes, be proud, understand that things are going to change, our bodies are going to change, our desires are going to change, but I think that spark of fancying someone shouldn't really die. And I'm very lucky that in all the partners I've had, I've not ended it because I didn't fancy them. I just ended it because I got a bit bored, and then the boredom developed into not fancying them. Do you get what I mean? I wasn't turned off by, I still shag them. But I'm just like, oh, you're not really firing my neurons as much. So it's like, I want to fancy them, and I want them to fire my brain up. So too much to ask.
I stand corrected.
Let's try it. Let's aim for it.
Let's aim for it. You both seem to date in different ways. Hell yeah. But what are both of your suggestions for navigating the literal headfuck of online dating?
I do not meet anyone, ever, that I don't think there's a 90% chance I'm going to fancy and you will be my boyfriend.
So I'll take a completely different view on this.
She's a spray and pray approach.
Yeah. So I'm readopting my old approach actually in the coming weeks. I'm about to get busy, okay?
It is summer.
It is summer and I'm feeling hot girl summer. But I do think, I was with someone the other day who said a friend of theirs like, right, I want a partner. And they committed to it, finding a partner, like it was a job.
It's a full-time job.
It's a full-time job. She went on 2 to 3 dates every single week for 3 months and now has a long-term partner. And I think I am at a place in my life where I would like to have someone to carry my bags for me. And the position is open. It's really easy to become dispirited from a couple bad dates. And I've got friends of mine who will say, oh, I just have such a bad experience dating. I just find that, men have been really like not nice to me. And they've gone on like 1 date or 2 dates and the person hasn't liked them or they haven't followed up. That is the nature of dating. Not everyone you meet is going to like you. And not everyone you meet, you're going to like them. That is just not how it goes. So I think it's just tread lightly, as Coco Mellors quotes in her brand new book, Blue Sisters. I just interviewed about that. And don't deep it. Go on if you want to find a partner, if you want to date more, go on lots of dates and see every single day as an opportunity to meet someone new. Don't stay too long. Don't get drunk if you don't want to. And just see it as data collection.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I agree with this method because it's a numbers game, right? And it really is about having the numbers, but just, you don't have to do it in the way you think a date's going to be, which is you spend all day getting ready, you go out, it's a 3-hour thing, it's dinner, just...
I've been brushing my hair on a date sometimes.
Yeah,
I come from the gym with wet hair, brushed it
it's true.
at the beginning of the date.
She's not lying.
I just don't really...
She's not lying.
Like, you're going to like me or not.
And then write in your journal afterwards what you liked and what you didn't like, which is what I do after every relationship. I do a post-mortem on the relationship every single time because I want to know, where did I let this person down? Where did they let me down? Where is our dynamic not working? Because all I'm doing, again, is training my brain for the... Do you know what I say to it? Edging. I'm edging closer, which is wrong for sex talks, but for any other conversation, it would be fine. But I am edging closer and closer and closer to knowing the thing that when I see it, I will know it, So the only reason why I was unable to do the spray and pray approach was because I had a child, which you don't have. Do you? I know. I said it. And then the second thing is I had a business, so it was really difficult for me to organise dates. It wasn't.
It was like part of the job actually. I'm like, what stories can I bring you all?
Yeah,
great. I'll go out there.
It's true.
Front line of battlefields. But I also think we talked a little bit earlier about the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves are so important. And I do think when it comes to dating, check the story you're telling yourself about yourself. Are you going into these dates thinking, I am great, I'm a catch, this is what I'm looking for, this is how I want to feel, this is how I know I can make other people feel when it goes well? Go in with a really positive story, because I think it can be easy to then become deflated and feel burnt out from dating when you're going in with a negative story, looking for that negative story to be reinforced. Because guaranteed, if you have those negative stories in your head, you think you're unlovable, you think that no one wants you, you will find proof of that 100%. But that doesn't mean anything. Like,
it's true. It's because this is why I said prove yourself wrong is an essay, because our brains are like heat-seeking missiles to be right. You know what I mean? They're just looking for ways to say, told you so.
How would you deal with a mismatched libido if the lower libido is the guy and also as the woman?
That's so hard. I'm just thinking when I've been in relationships with a mismatched libido and I was able to suppress it for a long time, but not forever. And I think I was just denying my desires. And I think that only you, dear caller, knows whether you can maintain that for a lifetime or not, or whether it's going to be something that truly bothers you. I've thought about this, like me and my future husband, I always think, is it possible to be with the same person for 20, 30 years and not want to sleep with anyone else? Or because I've never been in that situation. I always scenario plan. So I have scenario planned with my imaginary husband that we are 55 and I say to him, if you want to sleep with somebody else, you can, but you just need to tell me in advance so I'm aware, and I will also sleep with somebody else. And if this is the thing that is because if we've got this shared life and everything's gravy, but we're excited about other people, maybe that's okay. And it's also, it's a way of preparing my brain for a potential conflict or drama without stressing about it. You know, there's a difference between like the hypothetical pre-worry and scenario planning, how you might solve an issue in the future. Because I do want to be partnered for life. I don't want to get married to get divorced. Like I just,
so much admin, although it's cheaper now, £500.
Yeah, but it's just not my vibe, right? Like I don't like I'm already 40 now. It's the first time I'm getting used to saying it now. So I just think that to the anonymous question person caller, is this something where you can have a conversation with your partner about the fact that the libido is mismatched in a rational way that doesn't, I'm assuming it's heterosexual, doesn't emasculate them, you know, doesn't make them feel unloved, and is your needs are still met? Like, how do you meet in the middle? Because I think if you suppress your needs, it will over time build up into a resentment, and that's worse. Actually, you know, when I've you know this well, I end relationships at the exact moment before it starts to become resentful, and it confuses them because people are waiting for drama before you break up. So when I wake up, I'll be like this. I'll wake up one day and I'll be like, I'm done now.
It's true.
And they will be so confused because to them they're like, but this is
amazing.
And I'm like, I am at the exact threshold before I start to think you're a twat. And because I don't want to be that person, I don't want to be someone who's resentful. I don't want to be someone who's angry. I don't want to be someone complaining about my partner. I get really upset when my friends complain about their husbands to me. I'm like, that's your man. Like, but this is also a cultural thing. Like, I'm not talking about my man like that. If that's my man, that's my man. So I end it before it gets to a point where I know that this resentment, this whatever was in the beginning stages and I was fine to suppress, there's a point when I know I can't suppress it any longer. So I'd rather end it because I don't want to be nasty to anyone and I don't want them to be nasty to me. And when the person refuses to let that go, it ends up nasty. Understand what your threshold is before you feel that this is going to be something that your relationship is going to require serious therapy or counsel, you know, whatever it is. Before it gets to that point, have the conversation where it's like, these are my needs. How do we make sure my needs are met without crushing your spirit?
Very good piece of advice, I think. I adore your teaching of asking yourself, what do I want, and basing all decisions on that. I would love to practice that, but I find it so hard to know what I want. You and me alike.
Yeah.
I find it hard to really tap in and know what I want. Do you have any practical tips to help work out what you actually want?
And the reason why I think you find it hard to know what you want is because you find it hard to be still.
Just about to say that.
And I think to know what you want, you have to cultivate a stillness. And I've got a couple of essays on that. I've got one called Return to Nature. I've got one called Cut the Noise. And you have to find a place of quiet to hear your own voice, if that, without sounding, you know.
I'd add, I think that is so accurate. And as someone who has always struggled to do those two things, to sit still and therefore to really identify and define what I want, something I think about a lot now is it's easy to be a busy fool.
Busy doing nothing, I say.
Yeah.
Busy doing nothing.
Busy doing nothing. And I think don't mistake momentum for progress. And it's something that I find myself doing quite frequently because I love to be busy and I love to be running around a million miles per hour. And in many ways, it's a great thing. Like, it fuels me. It's what makes my life joyful. But it's in those moments of stillness that you do find that, as Sharmadean says, the answer's all within. And I remember I had COVID last year, or maybe the year before, maybe last year, and I was bedbound for like 4 days. And in those 4 days, the ideas, the realizations I had whilst confined to my bed, I read like 4 books and wrote reams. And it was at those moments I had some really, really like cataclysmic realizations about what I wanted the next phase of sex talks to look like, what I wanted, that I wanted to write more. There was a lot of stuff that happened, and that was because I literally didn't leave my bed for 4 days. And that's kind of my worst nightmare. But I think if you're someone that finds it difficult to sit still, like there will always be 1,000,001 things that come up. There will always be so many distractions, and I love a distraction. Give me a distraction any day and I'll fucking take it. But you have to force yourself to find that quiet time. I think you actually like ring fence it. At Sex Talks, we've talked a lot about ring fencing time to masturbate. Ring fence time to not do anything. If that's on a Sunday and it's a non-negotiable, it's your nothing time, and just force yourself. You know what? I'm going to do it.
I've made an Instagram account for the book where I'm putting each essay with some of the references that aren't like in the book, and links and books and podcasts and things to listen to, and Cut the Noise is actually live in there. And what I say is like, it's in the history of men's literature to seek solitude, to go into the mountains, to be a monk, to do, to have space and freedom to think and make art and philosophize. And it's not part of the women's canon. And I think there's something really powerful about being a woman in solitude. And, there's things I've done like going into the forest by yourself, going to a mountain by yourself, all of these different things. If you find it hard to just ring fence time to do nothing, take yourself on a mini vision quest in order to hear what is within. Because I remember I used to be so busy I didn't have time to take a shit. And I'm being serious, as in I would be
someone with IBS. I'm deeply alarmed by this.
I'll give you. So imagine I'm getting up at 6:30 to get my baby ready for school. I'm taking him to school. I'm doing calls on the way. I'm going to the office. I do back-to-back meetings. I pick up my son. I've got to go home, get changed. No time to take a shit, because then I've got to go straight back out to an evening event or a stack event or whatever I've got to do next. And I used to be at my desk sometimes and I'd close my eyes and I'd think, where do I want to be right now? And I started to write them down as a list. I want to be in Hyde Park walking. I want to be in a flotation tank. I want to be in a sauna. And I just started making this list of things that make me happy, because I felt like if I don't do it, I'm going to die. So I think having that, closing your eyes and just be like, what do I want right now? Your first gut reaction is the right one.
People say to learn to love yourself first, then you will have a loving partner. As someone who struggles with this and is at the start of their healing journey as an avoidant, what would you say? Agree or no?
Just start by liking yourself. I think this word love that we use, and I'm going to give you another motherhood example. When you're a mum and you say to your child, love you, they expect that, because that's normal, right? It's normal for as a mother to love your child. And I know there are instances where people don't have that feeling. Even I think my mum probably had postpartum depression as well. But typically there are all these chemicals that induce fake bonding with your child so that you love them. But what I used to say to my son all the time was, I like you, You're quite nice to be around. I really enjoy your company. Because the love is meant to be automatic, and the love is like a given and a big step. We talk about self-love, but I think baby steps. Do you like yourself? Do you like the way you walk? Do you like the way you talk? Do you like the way you think? Do you like the way you make others feel? And, write it down. I think journaling is for the person who said they're at the start of their healing journey. I'm so excited for you. I really am. It's so fun. It's so fun. But just write it, journal the whole thing. Write it down and say, here are the things I really like about myself. I might not love my thighs, but I like my tits. I might not. Do you know what I mean? Just start really simply.
I've said this a lot of Sex Talks before, so my apologies if people have already heard this, but I think I really love this question because I agree with Sharmadean. I think there's a lot of pressure. I've got to love myself and think I'm so fabulous. And for a lot of people, that can be really unrealistic. And for me particularly, that was to do with body image issues. I had an eating disorder growing up. I was bulimic for many, many years. And so I found it very difficult to just be on my own. And so in the context of romantic relationships, was really looking to other people to show me that I was like, had worth outside of myself and that I was okay, that I wasn't broken. But then I had rejection, so they were like, oh no, you are broken. And I think one of the things, again, I've repeated this a lot, but I think it's worth saying, that my sex therapist told me, which she was like, you have to learn to care for yourself. You have to learn to seduce yourself. And we talk a lot about self-care, and often that's kind of comes under the kind of capitalistic banner, and it's about buying lots of expensive products that we don't necessarily need. But I think when I think about what liking myself or loving myself looks like today, it's my capacity to care for myself in a way I was never able to growing up. Yeah. Because when I was on my own, I didn't care for myself. I was being bulimic and being kind of self-destructive, and I didn't know how to look after myself alone. When I'm on my own now, caring for myself means getting pleasure. I love to masturbate. Or like having a bath. Or like doing something that feels ritualistic and joyful, that doesn't have a higher purpose, doesn't have a specific outcome, but is just my way of kind of taking care of myself a little bit. A kind of romantic gesture that makes me feel really held. And being able to give that to myself now has been such a huge part of me not feeling like I have this void I'm now looking for someone else to fill. Yes, I can say I want a partner, I want someone to carry my bags, and all that may be true, but I don't feel this sense of emptiness, like I'm looking for someone else to come and pick me up and look after me, because I know I can look after myself. So I'd also say to that person, learn to seduce yourself.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Em.
Sure.
And I want to say, as part of if anyone has been through a 12-step program, part of that addiction process, that recovery process, is that caring for yourself. Not self-care, but the caring. And I remember thinking, what are all of the subtle ways that I'm abusing myself because I don't value my body? It could be,
getting too drunk.
Getting too drunk, because people know now, talk about all the time, I drink twice a year. Getting too drunk, but also, for me, one was straightening my hair all the time. It's quite a self-abuse, isn't it? To fry your head, to be susceptible to being burned by a hot comb or a straightening iron in order to fit in and be socially and physically and sexually acceptable. So when I did my first ever vision setting, 2017, and I said I want long hair past my shoulders, I was like, well, I can't achieve that if I'm abusing my body by frying my hair all the time, because I was straightening it, chemically straightening the edges and putting extensions in all the time. So it could be little things. And what I love about, like, when I'd be in a meeting, in a SLA meeting, someone would say, I've just made a good meal for myself today, and I was patient with the meal making, and I didn't eat it standing up. Or someone will say, I didn't have promiscuous sex today, which is a big deal, because I'm letting someone use my body. Oh, guys, if you haven't watched the Brooke Shields documentary on Disney+, please watch that, because that is a masterclass in a woman who, from being a child, has had almost all of her autonomy removed to the point where she thought she liked everything that was happening to her. But has anyone watched that documentary? Yeah. And she said, these things happen to me and I let them happen to me, and it's a form of the opposite of caring for yourself, So it could be very simple. I moisturized my entire body. I took time to put oil over every single part of my body as an act of touch, because I'm devoid of touch. So just think of those teeny tiny ways that you can start to appreciate the body that we've been so taught to hate. I say to myself, thank you, body, for keeping me alive, for allowing me to live, for my heart beating. We're so obsessed with how it looks superficially, and actually we just physically functioning?
A 36-year-old that is very single, aren't we all, love, and never been in a long-term relationship. Any tips for getting myself out dating again? I have a good career. I think of working abroad, but also worried I've left it too late to have new opportunities. Any advice, please? / should I be thinking of freezing my eggs? I have so much to say on this.
You go first.
I think we live in a society that tells women specifically and people generally that we are running out of time. We have put such a premium on youth and beauty as the as the things that are markers of success. And I think a long and well-lived life is the ultimate success any of us can hope for. And you say you're 36 and you're saying you feel like you're running out of time. How do you think you'll feel at 86? You have so many more, God willing, touch wood, you have so many more years left on this planet. And I always think, if not now, when? If you don't work abroad now, you don't go on that hot date, you don't fuck 3 people in one night and think, fuck it, I'm spraying and praying, or praying and spraying, or spray tanning myself, whatever Charlie goes. Like, if not now, when? Now is the best time. Yesterday would have been a better time, and today is perfectly great. And I think we're so conditioned to feel like, particularly as women, we have this shelf life in which we can do all the great things, in which we have value societally, and we can do the... That's just not true. You have your whole life to do all the things you want to do. And I think we've just been reflecting on what self-care and love for ourselves looks like. I think the ultimate act really of self-love is giving yourself the permission to keep on dreaming and keep on acting in accordance to believing that you can achieve those dreams, whatever they may be. So my first thing, don't feel like you're running out of time. Whatever it is you feel like you want to do right now, like, go and do it. Also, see the fact that you're very single, as right now you have the ultimate freedom to be wherever you want to be, to do whatever you want to do, to pursue whatever dream is like at the top of your head. When it comes to freezing of eggs, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Would never want to advise anyone anything medical, but I just think right now a lot of people are making a lot of money out of women's insecurity around their fertility. That's not to say don't do it. That's not to say it wouldn't work for you, but I just think do a lot of research into whether you're doing it because you feel scared and it's been marketed as the ultimate insurance policy. And you have to ask yourself, is it really? And again, ask yourself, like, dig a bit deeper. Like, why is it that you feel this like impotence to spend thousands of pounds right now? Also, what I would say is that half fertility issues are caused by men, so it's not just women. So just research and think. But I think we do, as I say, it's a very high pressure world we live in, and I think a lot of that pressure falls on women's shoulders. So I think we have to constantly sit back and be like, okay, where is this coming from?
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's really
Thanks,
good.
everyone.
My thoughts on the egg freezing, having thought that I would be married with 4 children right now, and like, I come from a big family. I never ever anticipated I would only have 1 child, so I briefly considered it, and then my logical brain looked at the success rate, and it was not a probability that I wanted to bank on. But at the same time, I was reflecting on the fact that there are so many ways to be a mother. Women's reproductivity has been a controlling method of women for so long, and is still crazily today being used as a method of control. But if we reflected on what does it mean to be a mother, and do you have to really have a vaginal birth to be a mother? And actually, many of us have been birthed by people who are not good mothers, or didn't mother us in the way that we needed. And what I'm thinking about now is, and I've actually written it in my vision setting, that part of my personality is that I'm a mother to all. Do you know what I mean? Part of my character traits is, how do I be nurturing to as many people as possible? And if you see me with other people's children, I act like they're my children. I don't really discriminate, and you used to annoy my son, because he'd be like, you're my mum, but like, if I see a little baby, in fact, today, I was recording a bit of content. I was walking on a wall outside White City, and there was a little boy, about 6, also walking on the wall, because that's what kids do. And he was staring at me as if to say, why is that grown woman walking on that wall? And I walked up to him, I went, you want my shoes, don't you? And he started laughing and he went, no. And his dad came over and we just had this cute little moment. And I just think that because of the way I was raised, where a baby was born every single year in my family, I'm very motherly to everyone. So it didn't turn out the way I wanted. I thought I would have more children and it hasn't, but I'm okay thinking about how I can be motherly to all children and adults in a way that makes me feel that that duty and that role is fulfilled without necessarily being part of the reproductive distribution and production system that controls capitalism and the patriarchy.
Wow.
Because that's,
she came out of that line at the end of the night.
That's what it is. And if any of you are STAT members or you're just curious, I'll send you the link. I recorded a lecture about soft power. And when part of the lecture is a diagram that I drew about how patriarchy really exists to ensure that women birth enough children to fight wars and pay taxes. That throughout history, that is it. It's like
when you
human
put it
capital.
like that.
No, but I know I'm saying it really flippantly, but really think about it. It's like we have been fighting wars since the agricultural revolution in order to protect property, capitalism, but you need human capital to fight wars. So you'd have to birth as many babies as possible. Because by the way, up until about 100 years ago, 50% of your children died before the age of 10. So do you get what I mean? If you don't have enough, when you look at the history of war and wars that were lost, it's because they didn't have enough soldiers. They didn't have enough soldiers, and then they didn't have enough money to pay the taxes, to buy the helmets and the swords and the silver. It's actually the intricacies and the money in war is utterly fascinating. If you've watched War Dogs, you'll know, yeah, that like to fund a war requires human capital. And who can create humans? Wait. Sorry, not create, because we all need to create. Who can grow a human, right? Female, the womb. So it's like you look at it and you're like, okay, so this is an asset that people in power have had to control. And that's my quacko theory.
A very good theory to end on, I think. I want to say thank you again to everyone for your wonderful questions. If your questions didn't get answered, watch the space, because I think we can answer them in another format.
We could do an Instagram live.
We'll do an Instagram live. Okay, I'd love that.
A Sex Talks Instagram live.
Okay, we'll do a Sex Talks Instagram live. We'll answer the rest of the questions. But thank you again so much for coming to Sex Talks. I love these events more than anything. I love seeing you all here. And thank you, Sharmadean, for offering such infinite wisdom on topics this evening that you don't usually discuss publicly. So I feel very grateful.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for you interviewing me. I'm like, can you do all my book tour interviews, please?
Yes, I'll come on tour.
Just come on tour. But also, I just want to say the book has been... it's really closing the chapter of my 0 to 40. It's everything I've learned up to the age of 40, and I'm really excited about the new phase of my life, which is I've now made it to 0. How do I start finding love, building wealth, maintaining my contentment? And what I do every single Sunday at 7:30 is I read a chapter of the book to STAT members. So if you do want to become a STAT member, please do. It's like £1 a week, super cheap. And
Best money you'll spend.
I sit on a Zoom in my pajamas every single Sunday, and we have a discussion about one of the essays in the book. And it's just my way of maintaining this closeness to the community, so I know what's going on. I love it. But yeah, please pre-order my book. I'll think
send
it's
around
good.
a link.
And thanks for
everyone
having
tonight.
me.
Thank you so much, everyone.